Welcome to Worship and the Word. I am Dr. Elise Barnett, and this is a channel where we bring faith-based responses to life situations. Today I wanted to talk about Let's Stop Draggin Danae Jackson. I wanted to dive in and talk about dealing with divorce. As many of you may know, Danae Jackson is the wife of public figure Derek Jackson. And recently there's been a lot of chatter about him being unfaithful to his wife, Danae. In response, she put out a brief video praying against mockery, accusations, slander, and lies. Now, as a woman who has gone through a bitter divorce, I think I can speak to the subject because I have been there, done that, and wrote the book, literally. Writing for me, it was a process that really helped me to heal. I received a lot of revelation about some things as well. So we're going to take a listen to the video, and then I'll be back with my thoughts.
Every person speaking against the names Danae Jackson and Derek Jackson in mockery, accusations, slanders, and lies, may the mercies of God be withdrawn from you. May your husbands and wives become widows. Let your children become fatherless. Let your seed become vagabonds on the earth. Let the words of your mouth and your words of your hands be returned back to you. Let it go down your throat and choke you slowly until your days become few on the earth. The word of God says, touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm. You've been warned. And if you want to know where that is at in the Bible, go to Psalm 109, go to Psalm 35, go to Psalm 140, go to Psalm 141, and keep our names out of your mouth in the name of Jesus. Have a blessed day.
All right, everybody, we are back, and Danae had a lot to say. So the first thing that I want to look at is her prayer per se. I want to look at why I feel like this was not an effective prayer. The Bible tells us that the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. So with this, one of her first things that she spoke about was mockery. Now, a lot of people are mocking her because she chose to pray. Prayer is part of what we discuss as spiritual warfare. So when you feel like the will of God for your life or your marriage or life as a whole is being attacked, then a powerful weapon that we have as Christians is prayer. So she is doing what she's supposed to do. She is praying for her marriage. Now, the thing is, we don't pray just when things go bad. The Bible tells us to pray without ceasing. So that means we need to be praying pretty much about everything in our lives, from the moment we wake up till the time that we go to bed. So the Bible tells us that what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. So what Danae or anybody else who's going through divorce, you need to know and understand is that divorce is a decision. So most of the time when one person files for divorce, usually at that point they've already kind of gone through the should I go, should I stay? They literally have mentally and emotionally, they have checked out. They're done. So as Derek is showing her at this point, he's ready to move on with somebody new. And because they are done, they will treat you with what I call disconnected emotions. So you have to remember that the person that you marry is not the person that you divorce. They're two different people. Or I like to say it backwards. The person that you divorce is not the person that you married, because they are two completely different people. So I know that, she may not want to hear this, but my thing is that the other chick is really not the enemy. And the reason why I say that is because your husband opened the door for her presence, he's allowing her to speak against you, to disrespect you, be in your house. So your battle is really with him. Now, the Bible tells us that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, and against spiritual wickedness in high places. What are those high places? Those high places are thoughts. So we're wrestling against the thoughts that are attacking your husband, that are being used to attack you. So really, your husband is just a vessel, and so he's really not, quote unquote, the enemy, and neither are the people who are kind of on the outside looking in, really trying to tell you, hey, you deserve better. You know, this is a situation that you probably need to get out of, and we're going to deal with that a little later. Now, the Bible also tells us that God hates divorce because it causes so much damage and pain for those, obviously for the people that are involved, for the children, for your family. It creates collateral damage. So you have to understand that it also impacts the kingdom. So when God has you joined to someone and you two had a planned destiny that God had in store for you, and then divorce comes and disrupts that, then that particular thing through you all doesn't get accomplished. So one of the other things that I learned, though, is that in spite of all of that, God will still honor your decisions. So regardless of what Derek decides to stay or go, he's going to have consequences and repercussions that he's going to have to deal with. If he does decide to stay in the marriage, he's going to have the consequences and repercussions of dealing with a woman that he has hurt and he has embarrassed and he has humiliated publicly. If he decides to leave, then he's going to have to deal with the consequences and repercussions of a divorce, of a ruined marriage, and whatever destiny God had in store for the two of them to accomplish. So for me, this is not about touching not my anointed, but more so where much is given, much is required. And sadly, he fell short of his vows and his promises, to his wife. He also shamed her. He humiliated her publicly, and obviously, he wasn't faithful either. But as a wife, I do want her to know that God does hear our prayers. And this was something that was so precious to me that I found out after divorce, per se, is that I didn't understand the magnitude of it before, but after I did. In 1 Peter 3:7, it says, "In the same way, you husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, with great gentleness and tact, and with an intelligent regard for the marriage relationship, as with someone physically weaker. Since she is a woman, show her honor and respect as a fellow heir of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered or ineffective." That was something that literally shook the core of my soul when I really understood how much God values wives in marriage and how serious he is about how husbands treat their wives. So if you heard the last part of it, do you understand that when a husband mishandles you, he doesn't treat you properly, it says that his prayers will be hindered, his prayers will be ineffective. So this isn't going to be like an easy win situation for Derek because of the fact that he has dishonored his wife. So what Derek has pretty much been blinded to is that he doesn't understand, or maybe he does, I don't know, but what people sometimes don't see is that marriage is supposed to be a visual representation of what heaven on earth looks like. So when people look at a godly marriage, they can see what the government of God looks like, how God loves us, how he cares for us, how he cherishes us, how he works through us. Just so that you all know how serious God takes our vows, it says, when thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it, for he hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow than thou shouldest vow and not pay. Now, the next thing I want to look at is the fact of what a public figure is. So, given the fact that Derek is a public figure, and his wife is also now a public figure, it puts you in a very vulnerable predicament. It opens you up to intense public scrutiny and all of that. So because of your husband's actions and his words, that has opened up your lives to fair and unfair comments, conclusions, and criticism. Now, sadly, the truth is hurtful, but it's not slanderous. So now I know that this has to be like a gut punch to see your husband with another woman. It's all over the internet. Like, I know that just has to rip your heart out. But let's look at what the law says about public figures. Now, reading from Wikipedia, it says that a public figure is a person who has achieved notoriety, prominence, or fame within a society, whether through achievement, luck, action, or in some cases, through no purposeful action of their own. Now, sadly, Derek has gained a lot of notoriety due to his social media presence. But more so, it's because of the fact that he did not keep his word. Now, they previously did a video together, and he was talking about how they were working on the marriage, they were working on their relationship, how he was working on his relationship with God, how, this was not going to be something that happened again, and now it has happened again. Now, continuing with Wikipedia, it says, in context of defamation actions, which would include libel and slander, as well as invasion of privacy, a public figure cannot succeed in a lawsuit on incorrect, harmful statements in the U.S. unless there is proof that the writer or the publisher acted with such actual malice by knowing the falsity or by reckless disregard for the truth. The legal burden of proof in defamation actions is thus higher in the cases of a public figure than in the case of an ordinary person. Libel laws vary considerably on this matter from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Even within a cultural grouping, the libel laws of the UK are quite different from the US, for example. So, in closing, divorce is really, really hard. It's not a joke. Whether, you say you want a divorce or you don't, either way, it's very, very hard. I remember when I was in the middle, or at the beginning, really, of my divorce, and I was in the bathroom one day, and I literally laid on the bathroom floor, and I wept so hard until my ribs were sore. Like, it physically hurt. You have to understand that you are ripping two souls apart, two lives apart, and you do experience a lot of emotions. Divorce is the death of a marriage, and you're going to grieve the death of that relationship. So, I was kind of reading different comments, and they were saying stuff like, she said that she'd do anything to keep the marriage. And, for me, that sounds like she's kind of going through like the bargaining stage. Literally during this stage, you're crying out to God, asking him to help you, help keep the marriage together. you're trying to talk to the other person, trying to see, what you can do to save your marriage. So when I was going through, I kind of looked at like different models for grieving, because I knew I was grieving. And the model that I liked was the 7 stages of grieving. And the reason why I liked it is because it showed that you can go through multiple emotions at the same time. So like the first stage was like shock and denial. So during this stage, it's like your brain is like, this is not happening. Like you literally are telling yourself, we're not breaking up. This is not happening. We're going to work it out. This is what your brain is literally telling you. And definitely this is something that your heart wants for sure. The second stage is like pain and guilt. So, earlier I mentioned that literally I wept until I was sore. You're feeling guilty. This is what I call the shoulda, coulda, woulda stage. Well, if only I woulda. Well, if only he woulda. Well, he shoulda. Well, I shoulda. You kind of go back and forth and, internally with yourself. The next stage is like anger and bargaining. And that's kind of where I think she is right now, where you kind of have levels to your anger, where it could be anger, it could skyrocket up to hatred. And, and again, you're bargaining, like, what can I do to make this work? Or she may be talking to him, what can we do to make this work? The next stage is really what I think is really kind of like the dangerous stage, is because you can kind of go through depression, reflection, and loneliness at the same time. So obviously, depression has different levels. People experience it different ways. Reflection, obviously, you kind of really just contemplating, what are we doing? And loneliness, obviously, that's self-explanatory. You're feeling the loneliness, you're feeling the separation. The next stage is like the upward turn. So this is where you're really kind of getting out of the dumps, per se, where, okay, you can see the sun shining again. You can see the beauty of the grass and the flowers again. Reconstruction and working through. So this is where you're really on a path of resolving everything internally. Now that you can kind of get to the point of saying, okay, well, we're not going to be together. And then lastly is acceptance and hope. And what I found is that hope is the last thing to die. Hope for the marriage is the last thing to die, because it is so interwoven with your love for that person. Hope is so interwoven with love. 1 Corinthians 13, starting from the 4th chapter. Love endures with patience and serenity. Love is kind and thoughtful. It is not jealous or envious. Love does not brag and is not proud or arrogant. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not provoked, nor overly sensitive and easily angered. It does not take into account a wrong endured. It does not rejoice at injustice, but rejoices with the truth, when right and truth prevail. Love bears all things, regardless of what comes, believes all things, looking for the best in each one, hopes all things, remaining steadfast during difficult times, endures all things without weakening. Love never fails. That is one of my favorite scriptures, because that shows us that love is more than an emotion, but it is full of actions. Love will show you its very nature by how patient it can be, by how long-suffering it can be, by how many times it can forgive and not count offenses that were done to us. It takes and it takes and it takes because of the forgiveness that's involved. Now, grief, it's kind of like a roller coaster. Like, some days you're good, some days you're not good. And when you have kids and you have to work, I think it just takes longer to get from broken to healed, because you have to put that situation aside and deal with life. Like, you don't really have time just to sit in your emotions and just process all day. So I know a lot of people are thinking, well, why did she stay through all of this? And really the answer is quite simple. She loved him. I mean, you don't get in marriage just to get out. When you value the marriage, when you understand that marriage is the good, the bad, the ugly, it really is for better or for worse, you really do trust God to try to work through whatever, because you're in it to win it. Over the years, I have found that healing is like dealing with an onion. You have to peel back one layer at a time. And what I've seen is that God doesn't pull back too much because he doesn't want you overwhelmed by the process. But his goal is to get you to the center of it. He wants you to be able to heal, and he does that layer by layer. It's kind of like baking a cake, and you put it in the oven and you take it in and out of the oven. Like, it'll cook eventually. It's just gonna take longer to get done. But hopefully, Danae has a really good support system, because she's gonna need them, just to get through, the months to come. If the divorce proceeds. But honestly, my prayers are with and for them both. Well, if you've made it this far, this is the end, and I really thank you and I appreciate you for taking the time to listen to my perspective on this whole thing. Listen to a little bit of my story as well. But you know how we do it. Please drop your comments below. I'd really love to read what you think about the video and the subject itself about Christians and divorce. So if you're going through divorce or you're recovering from divorce, and if you'd like to order my book, Love Lifted Me, What I Learned About Marriage After Divorce, then please see the link in the video. That's just going to take you right to my email address, and I'll be more than happy to share with you information on how to get the book. So don't forget to like, to share, and subscribe. We want this channel to grow. Please help us to accomplish our goal of being able to go into all the world and preach the gospel. Stay tuned for more great content. And until next time, God bless.